Greetings and salutations. Once again, we're continuing our trek through Nightmare. Now, where I left off saying on the previous video about being sure of your actions and being sure of about who you are and being sure of self, it isn't just from a some people would like to say that it's from a point of arrogance that you say that. The difference between arrogance and confidence is ego. If you have no ego, then it is confidence. If you have ego, then it is arrogance. I want people to be sure of themselves, because once you're sure of yourself, no one can take that away from you. Much like Shakespeare, the whole "I think, therefore I am." I believe that was Shakespeare that said "I think, therefore I am." That's true. You have thought, conscious thought. Contemplative thought, even.
This dead tree teems with energy.
We are the only species that we know of on this planet with quantitative, contemplative thought, as well as imagination. We are the only ones that have that gift of creation in our own minds. And once we are sure of self, we can access that gift of creation, imagination, because we no longer are sitting there trying to figure out the riddle of who are we? Why are we here? What is the reason? Right? That riddle's solved now. We don't need that. We don't need to figure it out. Because we know who we are. And we accept who we are.
Ruins the fate of all cities.
I accept everything I am. My little quirks, the fact that I'm overweight, I accept all of it. All of me. I accept my sense of humor, which sometimes is dry and a lot of people don't pick up on it, and that's fine. I mean, sometimes my humor can even be a little dark, but I try to keep my dark humor out of YouTube for a reason. Because again, it's just not really worth it. Not really meant to be in. Dark humor is more of like a thing that you can share with the people that know your dark humor. So it's like you and your friends know exactly how you are, so you can joke around with your friends in that regard. Kind of like that. But I like to be kind of... Like I said, I really enjoy being philosophical, so I'm being true to my philosophical self. I have that facet about myself that I often can delve into. Now, there are some people out there that don't like the philosophical side. There are some people out there that don't enjoy a lot of things. And to those people that don't like the philosophical side, I say, okay, watch my Black Ops videos. I'm not philosophical in those. Or watch my Pokemon videos. I'm not philosophical in those either. But to those that do enjoy the philosophy, but not with the whole overload of information that, like, say, Vsauce puts out, to those people I say, welcome. Enjoy the philosophy. When you look at life, and there's a lot of people that get kind of caught up in this, and it's something I've noticed over my many, many years of survival. Life, to me, life is an acronym. Life is an acronym which means living inside finite existence. All existence is finite. Everything. All existence is finite. Your existence, my existence, the existence of buildings, the existence of roads, bridges, everything is finite. Everything has a story. I have stories. You have stories. Other people have stories. And to live inside that finite existence is to share those stories and to also live vicariously through those that participated in those stories. And the best way I can elaborate this point is I have no drive to climb Mount Everest. None. But I'll sit there and I'll listen to a man who did. Or a woman who did. Doesn't really matter. I'll listen to the person that did. And the reason I'll listen to the person that climbed Mount Everest is simple. Because I can be there in that moment when they're talking about their climb of Mount Everest. I'm living through them vicariously, seeing the world as they did at that moment. The ups, the downs, the pitfalls, the successes, everything. Living in that moment with them as they relive that moment. Sharing anecdotal stories like that is not egotistical. And people like to say, well, you know, it's what the narcissists do. They like to talk about themselves. Nah, see, when you start talking about stories, anecdotal stories that have happened, you basically are saying, I invite you to live this part of my life with me as I tell you the tale. That's it. That's all it is. And far too many people have become so self-absorbed that they don't see it. They refuse to sit down and enjoy a story told by someone else. They refuse to sit down and enjoy anecdotal, possibly even humorous stories. Or somber stories. They refuse. Because they're more worried about themselves. And in many cases, they're more worried about money. Now, this is where I totally expected people to be like, wait a minute. Hypocrisy 101. Here he is on YouTube trying to make videos and make money. And here he is talking about hypocrisy. You know, here he is talking hypocrisy because he's trying to make money and then is trying to tell everybody else that often people, all they care about is money. I'm not doing YouTube because I want to make money. Would it help? Yes, absolutely. Would I love to make money? Yes, absolutely. Is that the reason I got into YouTube? No, not really. I got into YouTube because I was originally streaming, and my friend told me YouTube is much easier to do, and it helps free up your schedule more and more. It's better for those that want a schedule to be more flexible. You should consider it. And I thought, I'll consider it. And so I did. I considered it. I took my time, thought it through, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna go do YouTube. And upon starting the YouTube journey, I must say I've had more fun doing this than I've ever had streaming. Now, if I started making oodles of money the next, let's say in the next month, well, I mean, sure, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be like icing on the cake. But the channel's not going to change. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, but Quiz, everyone says that, and then they change because they sign contracts, etc. Ah, but here's the difference. Never sign a contract that you don't personally believe in. Stay true to your guns. Never sign a contract you don't personally believe in. I won't. This is why I don't like making clickbait content. Now, the whole But Will It Snipe series, that's not clickbait. It's not. I attempt to snipe with non-sniping weapons. It's not clickbait, per se. Some people would argue that it is clickbait, simply because it's But Will It Snipe, and you're trying to get people inspired to watch the video. Well, of course I'm trying to get people to inspire to watch the video. But by the end of it, I show that things are lethal and that they can snipe. Definitively, yeah and no. I mean, I kind of hem and haw and I give my opinion. I think it's round tier Tal Soul, I think, for insight. I believe. I'll have to double check that. But nevertheless, I tried to definitively answer those questions of, but will it snipe? It's not clickbait. It's not like I'm saying, oh, check out this crazy shot I made. And then have, you know, the whole episode edited with, music clips and, snap cuts and jump cuts and everything. No. I like leaving everything that I make in a raw format. 100% raw. People say, I've had people ask me in person, like, a couple of my friends ask me, they're like, why do you leave it in raw content? It's just like, why don't you edit? I said, because if I edit, I become just exactly like everything else out there. There's no difference. There's nothing that's changed. I become exactly the same exact thing. An edited video that shows the best of what you can do. Or what you would consider a funny moment, per se. And I don't want to do that. If there's a funny moment, enjoy it in the moment. If there's not, there's not. You spend the rest of the time thinking philosophically. Which is another thing about enjoying things in the moment. Which is another philosophical topic that I wanted to get to. Is being present in every moment. I know some of the people out there that watch this, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but I am present in every moment. I'm here. I can't be anywhere else. That's not exactly what I meant. Be present in every moment. Now, this is the difference. When you're present in every moment, you are consciously aware of every minute of the day. You are quantifying that minute and saying, basically, I exist. I am here. In a sort of roundabout way. But having that ability to be present in that very moment will make the days feel longer. It's a little bit of a trick with time. It's a fun little trick with time you can actually do if you wanted to have a little bit of fun with it. And it shows how being present in every moment does indeed slow down time. Here's what you do. You set a timer for 1 minute. And when you set that timer for 1 minute, you sit there and you watch the timer for 1 minute. It'll feel like it's crawling by. It feels like it's taking forever. You're like, man, I wish this time would go quicker. And you sit there the entire time watching the clock, watching that minute go by. And it feels like it's just crawling. And then what you do is you set the timer for a minute and then don't pay attention to it. Just start doing something else. And watch how fast that minute goes by when you're not paying attention. Seems like it flies by. Reason why that is because you're occupying your mind with other things. This is a very sort of meditative lesson out there for those people out there that need to really quantify and think and meditate on something. This is a great lesson to learn. When we're constantly occupied by other things and stimulated by other things, we never have time for self. And that time for self is that time to decompress and to really sit down and sort out all the clutter that we have in our minds. And that clutter in our minds often blocks us up. And that's what causes us to be irritable. That's what causes us to lash out. That's what causes us to sit down and not really focus on anything. We get disjointed and we start just... It affects our daily lives. It's kind of like that old statement, a watch pot never boils. But it's... Invert that. The reason why a watch pot doesn't appear to boil is because you're watching it. And therefore you are present of that moment. And by being present of that moment, the pot takes longer to boil because you're taking more time out of your day to focus on the time. Whereas if you're not watching the pot, the water boils. Because you're not paying attention. I got to thinking. When you're in that moment, being present in that moment, and you start looking at the water and contemplating, what do you think? Like, what's the thought process that would go through your mind watching a pot of water boil? Do you sit there with the intent of, I hope this boils soon so that I can make my food? Do you sit there and say, I want this water to boil because I'm purifying water? Like, what's the thought process? I'm willing to bet your mind would go blank watching a pot of water. Because it would become very meditative. You'd be sitting there listening to the sound of the gas burner, if you have a gas burner. Or you'd be sitting there listening to the water start to boil. If you have an electric burner, you'd be able to hear the water actually starting to bubble. And so you'd be focused on other things. Possibly entering a very meditative state. Which is not a bad state to be in, I'll tell you that right now. When you get into a mental state where nothing matters, nothing that's going on around you matters, because you're just to that point of, I can't even say bliss, because it's not bliss. It's not numbness either, because you're very conscious and aware. But you get to the state of just being, and you're existing, and you're quantifying and listening and taking in all things around you. There really is nothing like it. And it's quite interesting. I mean, it's interesting to me. Then again, I've always been someone who's rather esoteric. I mean, I sat there looking at my hand one day and I thought, you know what, those lines gotta mean something, and then immediately picked up a book on palm reading and started reading it. Now I know how to do palm reading. And numerology. But I legitimately sat there and I just was looking at my hand one day and I was like, those lines gotta mean something. See what I mean? That's the quantitative thought I was talking. Same thing happens when people are woodworking and they're sitting there and they're planing wood, right? And they got the hand planer and they're making long planing strokes, and it's taking very minute levels of wood off, almost like veneer levels of wood. And in that moment, they're basically meditating. They're just listening to the sound of the plane, go across the wood's surface. They're indulged in the smell of the wood and everything like that. And it's interesting what that meditative mind will do, because that's where all the sparks of creation come from. That's where your mind is free to wander and think things through and think about things. It's not really an emptiness, but it's more of like you see the thoughts that exist before you, but they carry no weight. If that makes any sense. Ooh, shale root.
This tower has its charms.
That's exactly what a meditative mind is. It is not an emptiness. It is where you are to a point that you're sitting there and you hear your mind chattering and you just say, you know what? That chatter doesn't matter.
Well,
And with that chatter not mattering, your mind is free.
Yes?
Now, I'm not saying it like, Morpheus or anything, and just looking at people and being like, free your mind. I'm not doing that. I'm saying, take the time. Just kind of meditate. For some people, meditation requires music. Other people, meditation is just simply watching your breathing. And for other people still, meditation seems almost unattainable because they're concentrating too hard. But I assure you, anyone can do it.
What you need?
I need a 4-socketed polearm that doesn't suck. But unfortunately, Charcy's Bogart.
Good evening.
I'm sure I'll find one. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. Someday and for the rest of my life. Reminds me. Take a look at old movies. Now, defines on, what you mean by old. Casablanca. Old movies. Take a look at how society was. Right? Now, for some people, they'd be like, oh man, that was backwards. Okay. What was so backwards about it? Guy, take sort of any movie, really, and take a look at the plot line. It's not much different than a plot line of today. How is it so backwards? That's because of how certain people acted or behaved. That's why they say it was backwards, but is it really backwards, though? I mean, the protagonist usually is a person who is sure of themselves, sure of their convictions, and then ends up having some tribulations along the way, overcoming tribulations with the help of either allies or gaining a new set of skills, or what have you. And it's like, how's that any different than, say, any other plot line that exists today? Or, like any movie plotline, any anime plotline, they're all the same. Like, they all have the protagonist achieving something. Alright? So there's no real, like... not going into the whole... I mean, it's extra XP, but I'm trying to look for... I think I found the pathway to it. The Tamo Highlands. That way I could try to get Act 1 done. Maybe. If you think about it, like, every single protagonist all does the same thing. You know? They have a set of skill. They get a new skill, or they have some sort of assistance in overcoming their tribulation. And then, in the end, the protagonist wins. It's no different than any other plotline today. But in Casablanca and other older movies, I haven't really watched all of Casablanca, to be fair. But in older movies, they say, wow, that's no way that a man should treat a woman. You know? Goes around, calling her a dame. And it's like, I don't see the issue there. And people's gonna say, like, right here now, they're gonna be like, whoa, 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 that's misogynistic. But is it really? You do realize a dame is a title of authority in the British Crown. It's true. Obviously, you have, Duke and Duchess, but you also have Lord and Dame, which is a female lord. So, knowing that, is it really that bad of a thing? It's kind of an honorific. And you have people that take offense to it. Oh, they shouldn't call them dames. Well, they're trying to give them a position, a heightened position, a position of authority, foisting them higher than themselves, making them someone they treasure, someone worth pursuing, someone worth going after, someone worth, not really going after, but someone worth sacrificing for. That's what they meant by it. Because it's literally a title. It's a monarchy title. It's a monarchical title, and yet people take offense to it. It's like, but why? I mean, take a look at all the Frank Sinatra songs they didn't care for because, he was calling women dames, and it's like, but it's a title of nobility. I don't know about anybody else, but if somebody came up to me and started calling me like Your Grace or Your Eminence, I'd be like, I'm not deserving of that, to be honest. But outside of not being deserving of it, I don't see an issue with it. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. That I don't find it as an offensive title. And they're just like, well, we would prefer to be, called by our names, etc. It's like, okay, well, what if the person doesn't know your name? And so he bestows upon you a title of nobility. Don't know about you, but I wouldn't take offense to it. I'd be like, it's like, alright, I see you. I mean, it's not like, it's not like I expect a woman to come up to me and be like, Your Grace, Your Eminence. It's be like, especially in this day and age. It's like that stuff died in the 1600s. What are we talking about here? Though I think they need to bring it back. I think people need
No way.
to start having that sort
The
of
force of nature.
respect and honorifics. Solely because if you think about it, let's take a look at a whole bunch of societies. Let's take a look at, say, Japanese society, for example. They have honorifics for people. They have honorifics to calling people certain things and giving that heightened sense of title to people. And look at their society. It's more respectful. They respect one another's privacy. They respect one another's property. They respect one another's just everything. They respect one another. And I think if we were to bring that to here and start bestowing honorific titles to people, it might actually switch the society around. But I think that has to go... I think that also has to kind of play into... There needs to be self-respect as well. Because I think a lot of people have stopped really respecting themselves. They treat themselves very poorly. And in that regard, I think that loss of self-respect has kind of brought about a lack of respect for others, because, you know, they're like, why should I respect others if I don't even respect myself? Now, I don't agree with that mentality. I think everybody should respect themselves. I think people need that sort of integrity, dignity, if you will. I think that's what people need. I think society needs it too. And people say, well, what do you mean self-respect? Just respect who you are. You know, like anything. Anything you think needs self-respecting. Right? We are our own adjudicators. We are our own judge of what our lives are and how we live them. Each person's going to have a different perspective on that. Each person's going to have a different thought process on what is and is not, you know, self-respecting. And I will say this. Just because someone doesn't find what you do a form of self-respect doesn't mean it's not self-respect. Just so you know. It just means they don't see it that way. And if they don't see it that way, that's a them issue then, isn't it? But I think people get so caught up in how they're treated that they forget that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Of course, you're gonna have an angry horde of people being like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Truthfully, it doesn't. Does it change how you feel about you? Bet it doesn't. Willing to bet anybody that sits there and you get treated poorly throughout the day, you go home and you're just like, you know what? Doesn't matter. Not in the least. Because it doesn't change how they feel. Deep down inside, they know them. They know themselves. And that's that self-acceptance that I was talking about in the previous video. And the self-acceptance and all the self-love. That's where that comes from. That's why it's important. It's important to have that. It's important to really focus on it. So I'm going to tell you right now, no one in the world is going to treat you better than you. And that's the truth of it all. You can hope to find somebody that treats you better than you treat yourself, but no one in the world is going to treat you better than you. Ow. That was a painful, cold, enchanted person, wasn't it? Ooh, heavy gloves. Sanders superstition? Sanders taboo. Defense in life. I do like that. You know, there's been many people that have said, and this kind of goes along with the whole treat yourself, you're the only one that'll treat yourself as, the best. There's been people out there that always say things like, be kind to one another. Let's talk about kindness and what it is and what is niceness. The difference between kindness and niceness is very, very minor. Okay? Niceness is telling people what they want to hear. Even to the point of sugarcoating it. You sugarcoat it and you tell them what they want to hear. Kindness is telling them what they need to hear. That's the difference. Because sometimes the kindest word you can tell to somebody is something they've desperately needed to hear all along, but were too afraid to hear it. There have been people that I have talked to, friends of mine, who are no longer friends because I told them what they needed to hear, and because it wasn't what they wanted to hear, they took great offense to it and just cast me aside. But at the end of the day, I end up hearing from them a few years later, a few years down the road, and they all say the same thing. And the thing they always tell me is, I never knew I needed to hear that.
Charcy will be thankful to get this malice.
And they all say it without exception. There's no exception to the rule. Every single person I have told to that person what they needed to hear has all said the same thing. Now, that may not be the case for everybody. I mean, like, that may be, I may be the one-off where, it's only happened to just me, and it's never happened to anyone else. If that's the case, well, then I'm sorry that it doesn't happen. But that's how it always happens to me. It's just a whole bunch of people saying, you know, they end up saying, thank you. I needed to hear that. Usually followed by me saying something along the lines of, I know. That's why I said it.
Oh,
Now, people think that that's kind of me gloating or being, you know, haughty. But it's not.
to see you.
It's basically saying, I know you needed to hear it. That's why I said it. Thanks, barbarian skill levels. Great. Clearly playing a barbarian. Clearly.
It is. Hello.
I'm gonna gamble a little bit. What should I gamble for? Heavy boots? Might be able to get Sanders Rip Rap. Or Superstition or whatever. Ooh, Charge Bolt when struck, half freeze duration. Not bad. But not good enough. 16% chance to get better magic item. Which just increases your treasure class. Doesn't actually do anything. Vidala's Fatlocks. Come on, something good. Give me something to work. Ooh, Poison Legs Roost. Half freeze duration. Magic items. At least I don't have to get these identified by Kane. Wouldn't that suck? Man, Geet is just running me down, man. Gotta buy 4 more. Nope. Faster run walk, cold resist. Sure. Better chance of getting a magic item. You know what? Well. There's no way I'm gonna make it to the inner cloister. I have to be up in 7 hours to start my day. But I thank everybody for coming out and watching the video. I had fun making it. And I always seem to go into a thought-provoking frame of mind when playing Diablo, because I could just kind of like veg out and play, and where my mind wanders is always usually philosophical. But thanks so much for watching. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.